What's going on, guys? Mega Gig back with another video. Taking a look at the Might of the Earth set. Again, we are on the PTR patch 2.6.1. There was recently an update, last night to be exact, that increased our 6-piece set all the way to 5,600% damage. Increased the damage of Earthquake, Avalanche, Leap, Ground Stomp, Ancient Spear, and Seismic Slam by 5,600%. And for us, we are using Earthquake and Seismic Slam in this build. And I picked this build to go over first because we went over that change, and we went over this change before, but not with this build, so I thought I would you know, demonstrate the new Band of the Might, or Band of Might buffs with this build as well. Nothing else has really been changed. The Girdle of Giants is still the same as before, as well as the Bracers of Destruction. And the Band of Might has changed. It changed in the last patch, so a little over a week ago, I guess it was. I could be wrong on that. Maybe it was 2 weeks ago. But now you get 80% damage reduction instead of the 60 that I think it was. And so for the build we are using our Leapquake build that I went over before. We are using both shouts to cause earthquakes and avalanches from our Blade of the Tribes. And we are using both shouts. We're not using Wrath of Berserker Insanity. You can swap out Warcry for Wrath of Berserker Insanity. If you do that, I recommend swapping out you need to have the Boonable Kathos passive. That being said, when it comes to blue elite packs, if you have Wrath of the Berserker on with the Insanity rune, you can blow up blue elite packs in the time that your Wrath of the Berserker's up, and maybe less. Gold packs, generally not. And especially not on Rift Guardians, you end up with a lot of downtime on your Wrath of the Berserker. I've ran a bunch of different Rifts. I've just been running 90s to kind of test this version versus the Wrath of the Berserker, and in most cases they're almost identical. This version allows for a little more toughness, however, though. Because when the Wrath of the Berserker, you only have 20 seconds of immense damage, which is quite a long time, but then even with your Boonable Kathos passive, you've got a lot of downtime on your Wrath of the Berserker, and you're not doing as much damage, whereas this is allowing you an entire another Earthquake and another Avalanche, and both of those are being buffed by our 6-piece bonus here. And this version also gives more toughness because, of course, Warcry itself gives toughness. And then we're also using the Superstition passive on our amulet that gives toughness as well. So I'll show you our toughness in battle with full Rampage stacks. It's about 1.2 billion. And if you go the Wrath of the Berserker way, your toughness is only about 600 million. Now, that brings me to the gems also that we're using. Normally, before all the changes, you would have used an Esoteric of Alteration gem for toughness instead of, I have Bane of the Powerful in here. The two set gems are Bane of the Trapped and Bane of the Stricken. You need to have both of those. However, since Bane of Might was buffed, you don't really need an Esoteric anymore. So I've thrown a third gem in there. Right now I've just been testing with Bane of the Powerful. As long as you run it into elites often enough, you can kill them and you can keep that buff up fairly good. I've got mine at rank 90, and that is 2 minutes long. For the buff, this is kind of open-ended because you're going to have, if you're going this exact route that I'm showing here, and yeah, I do have one purple gem in there. I don't know why. Yeah, I don't know why. But if you're going this exact build here, this is kind of open-ended. You can use Bane of the Powerful, which gives you 20% increased damage for 120 seconds after killing a Leap Pack. That's all damage. And then you also gain 15% increase and 15% reduced damage to and from elites. So it's a little less version of Bane of the Stricken without the stacking, of course. That is kind of open-ended, though. People have been known to run Pain Enhancer with this build. We don't really need the attack speed though, so it's not. That was before when we were using Seismic Slam and didn't have the Rumble Rune. So probably not Pain Enhancer. An argument can be made for Wreath of Lightning. It's going to boost your movement speed, which isn't super important in this build, but it does help, and you're also getting that lightning damage around. You're going to be in melee range most of the time in this build, but an argument can also be made for Stone of Vengeance because it will help you kill mobs as you hop away. You'll do more damage to them, but again, not really super useful. So the most useful gems that I have found, I haven't actually tried running a gem of Ephesus Toxin yet. That might be a contender. But really, even going this way, you still blow up elites very, very quickly. And I feel like even in Greater Rift pushing, Bane of the Powerful is probably going to be your best bet. If you're going the Wrath of the Berserker way and you start pushing really, really high, I don't have any augments here, and this build is probably, I've only pushed a 90. I could probably do a 92, 93 as of right now. I really could use a better weapon. But when you're right on the brink of where you're at, if you're going with the Wrath of the Berserker version, you're going to have less toughness. You may have to use an esoteric, but then the damage you gain from that, you're going to lose from losing Bane of the Powerful. And this build just offers almost double the toughness of the Wrath of the Berserker version. So that is kind of everything in a nutshell. And don't forget, you get the 20% bonus for the 2 minutes after killing an elite pack, but the 15% increased and decreased damage to and from elites, that's all the time. So keep that in mind. And yeah, at least it says it's all the time. I never really asked. So we're going to run a 90 in this video just to demonstrate the changes, of course, to the damage, and then I want to show off the toughness as well with Band of Might. I may have briefly touched on this in my stream, but I haven't actually done a video addressing it. And a lot of people seem to really like this build and get kind of upset that I don't post enough about this build. So without further ado, we're just going to run a 90. Hopefully it's a decent rift. And the volume might be a little high. And this version has a little more of an established rotation. You can see 1.1 billion, and I'll try to remember. Oops. I'll try to remember to show you. One thing about it is you can get crowd controlled in this build if you don't have the Wrath of Berserker. And even if you do, it's only going to last for 20 seconds. So be aware of that. Alright, we're at our 25 stacks. There is our toughness, almost 1.3 billion. The majority of our sustain is coming from life per fury spent. And there went the elite pack. Let's see if we can find all these progression orbs. Even though Earthquake and Avalanche are both being buffed, still our biggest source of damage is Seismic Slam, and that is why we are wearing the Seismic Slam bracers and this and that. And I didn't get my Earthquake off there. Messed up my rotation. And we're doing plenty of damage, so I'm just going to save it just so I can get my rotation back set. If you're wondering what I'm talking about in the rotation, it's about when I click skills. And I done messed it all up now. Make sure you're jumping around. That's where your toughness comes from. Yeah, and I did talk about the rotation. I explained it in depth in my previous Might of the Earth video, so feel free to check that out. That explains more about how the actual build is played and so on and so forth. You do want to get as much fury as possible with this build. Yeah, I know, I just messed up the rotation again. It's surprisingly difficult when you're talking and playing at the same time. I don't have any Paragon points in movement speed because you're going to be jumping around most of the time, so you're not really going to need a lot of movement speed. It's not super beneficial. It's always nice to have, but it's not super beneficial. If Oculus Ring placement isn't good, make sure your Earthquakes are all on the enemy, but you can also get to the enemy and or you can get to your Oculus Ring and cast your Seismic Slam and then jump right back in the fight, so you're doing a little bit more damage. And when I'm playing and talking, I really don't have focus. It's difficult to try to explain things and play at the same time. I know I've said that before. Other YouTubers have also said it. It's surprisingly tough. And if you find a trash pack with decent density, feel free to clear it out. And I messed all that up, because you're going to be doing a ton of AoE damage. Of course, I have a power shrine now, but just in general, you're going to be doing so much AoE damage that you can clear trash packs pretty quick. Of course, we get the power shrine, and there's no elites around. And hooray, there's an elite right when we burned everything and everything. I feel like they still need to fix rifts. They're always talking about quote-unquote quality of life changes, but rifts still can be a pain in the rear sometimes. I get it that it needs to be random and not every rift can be perfect, but when you run like 5 in a row and you just don't get the luck. Yeah, again, there's our toughness. Our actual weapon damage on this build is fairly low. Once you get all your stuff augmented and you get a really good weapon and all that, your weapon damage will be higher, but it's still not going to be as high as some. But that's because this build is more about the multipliers and not the base weapon damage. These enemies that run away from you are always annoying. Thankfully, Seismic Slam has quite a reach on it, but it is directional, unfortunately. It would be really, really nice if Seismic Slam... I'd be okay if they nerfed the range of Seismic Slam to, say, half of what it is, but instead of going in a direction, it went around you. So it was basically the radius of Earthquake. What do you guys think about that? Does that sound like something that would intrigue you? Or are you okay with Seismic Slam being completely directional? And it does fan out as it goes. You can see, you can cast it, and it fans out bigger and bigger. The only problem is with packs like Blue Elites, sometimes you only get 1 or 2 of them in your Seismic Slam. Got a gnat flying around my face. Darn gnats. Don't they know this is important business? Now, the Molten Fury rune has been used for a season or 2. The Cave-In rune is what we used to use on the Earthquake build, and it created a lot of density, but it didn't do as much damage. The Molten Fury rune does a lot more damage. The only thing is you do have issues with density sometimes. And I've yet to try the Cave-In rune. I imagine, like I said, you're going to be doing less damage, so I imagine I don't know, the extra density you make I don't think would make up for the lack of damage anymore. I don't know. I may try it though and see what we get. And this is about par for the course on what I've been clearing these 90s. A couple of them I cleared with only a minute to spare, and that happened both with and without Wrath of the Berserker. And really, it's just if you get a not good rift, you know, a lot of dead space, things of that nature. Oh, perfect Oculus ring placement. Darn, misclicked. Which made me mess up my rotation. You have to be careful with your leaps when you get knocked back and such. You can be knocked back out of your leap, and then you may not have cast all 3 of your leaps. In which case you're not going to have as much fury. In which case you're not going to get your leap back off cooldown. And of course I didn't get my Earthquake off. But I will this time. It has a kind of a longer cast timer compared to just Seismic Slam, and so it takes a second to get off, and sometimes you don't realize you haven't cast it. At least I don't. And this is going to get us to the Rift Guardian. Bloop, bloop, bloop. There we go. And we've got 4.5 minutes to spare. And even without our Rampage stacks, we're at 1.1 billion toughness, you can see, which is a lot of toughness. You want to make sure you still have a lot of HP, though, so you can take a hit, because you're still going to need to take a hit. My pickup radius is not very good on this build, on this gear. You can see we're doing all right on the Rift Guardian. One thing you may have noticed, and this is true so far of the Whirlwind build too, and I assume it's probably going to be true on all the other Barbarian builds, is we are now critting in the billions. See a lot of B's on the screen. There were a lot of other classes that crit in the billions, and people were always making fun that Barbarian didn't crit in the billions. Now my Whirlwind build has a lot of toughness, but it really has a lot of sustain. However, the toughness is only about 650 million on there, and I can't take a hit from this guy on my Whirlwind build. If I do, I'm dead. You can see taking a hit from this guy on this build takes me down to about half, a little less, maybe a third. But with one cast of Seismic Slam, dumping all of our Fury, we're only at 182. We heal up a really good chunk. So that is that, guys. Just so you know, here's a kind of a screenshot of the skills we're using. This is not a build guide. This is just looking at the changes. When this goes completely live, I think there's been enough changes that I will probably do an actual build guide video for this again, even though I did an update video on it not too awful long ago. So when all these things go live, when the patch finally hits at the end of the season, whenever it is, and it goes on the live server for everybody, I will be doing fresh build guides on these things for you guys. These videos are mainly just taking a look at the changes. Let me know what you guys think. Yeah, I gave my opinion on some of the changes and the buffs in the previous video when we were just discussing the patch itself. So I'm not going to go over all that stuff again, but we are now up on the 6-piece set to 5,600%. So yeah, and yeah, the Band of Might is also at 80% now, which actually was the previous patch, but worked into this build now, and I've got 1.3 million toughness. You can see, or 1.3 million health. See, our toughness goes from 69, and then we jump, boom, all the way up to 1.1 billion from the Band of Might. So a lot of toughness in this build. It's gonna be a lot of fun in groups, especially, and solo pushing. And when this stuff goes live, I'm gonna start augmenting this stuff and see just how far I can push with this build. And of course, I'll keep pushing with the Whirlwind build as well. Let me know what you guys thought of the video. If you liked it, leave a like and a comment down below, and subscribe, guys, if you want to see more. Thanks, guys, for watching, and more good stuff to come. Take care.